Welcome everyone to the Eurodoc Conference 2021. We are happy to be here at the National Technology Library in Prague with this hybrid session. So we will have speakers on-site and online also today. Yesterday, we already had a session about doctoral training across Europe, professionalization of supervision, career development of early career researchers. And today, we are going to start the session at 10 with implementing open science. Then we follow promoting the research integrity and the mental health and work-life balance. I am Giulia Malaguarnera, the president of Eurodoc. Here we have Eva Natkowa, that is the chair of the Eurodoc Conference 2021, and she's the coordinator of the Council of Higher Education, Higher Institution,
of the Commission of the Student Chamber of the Council of Higher Education Institutions.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I will leave the floor to Mariana to speak about the technicalities of the day. And thank you for being here. And I hope that you will enjoy also today these sessions.
Thank you. Before I go into technicalities, I would also like to thank our partners, the National Library of Technology, the Czech Association of Doctoral Candidates, and to mention that the event takes place under the auspices of the Czech Republic Conference, the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports, the Council of Higher Education Institutions, the University of Chemistry and Technology in Prague, and the Czech Technical University. Now onto the technical part of the presentation. The conference will be recorded and streamed. You can find the streams online on the Eurodoc website. Also, the presentations will be available to you after the conference, so you can check eurodoc.net website. Participants, you can see that your microphones and cameras are off. So if you wish to talk to each other or ask our panelists some questions, please use the Q&A section. If you wish to talk to each other, use the chat box section. For questions, please use the Q&A section. Also, there's the possibility, if you raise the hand in the Zoom software, we can promote you to a panelist, and then you can ask your questions directly with a video on. So this is from me, the technical part. And now I would like to introduce the first session of the day, which is the fourth session of the whole conference concerning implementing open science, which will be moderated by Eva Hnátková, who is the former president of Eurodoc, and I give the floor to her. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome all of you at this session on open science, especially our attendees and our speakers. And as Mariana said, my name is Eva Hnátková. I am former president of Eurodoc, and I am also open science coordinator here at the National Library of Technology and at the University of Chemistry and Technology in Prague. And my role is trying to implement European standards into the Czech Republic. And now a brief introduction to open science. So open science is the new way how to do the research by using digital technologies and tools for collaboration. So it's open the research process, which can be available. And generally, this open science means also many practices. The most important pillars is open access to research publication, but also open access to research data, which needs to be according to the FAIR principles, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So these are two main important pillars, but we have also other elements of open science, let's say open peer review, open methodology, open evaluation, and also citizen science, and you will see more. So we are, as a Eurodoc, we are strong supporters of open science, and that's why I would like to give also first talk to Oleksandr Berezko, who is the General Board member of Eurodoc, and he's also coordinating the Eurodoc Open Science Ambassadors, and he's associated professor and head of the web services support and development and unit at the Lviv Polytechnic National University in Ukraine. He was vice head of the Young Scientist Council at the Ministry of Education, Science of Ukraine, and nowadays he's a member of the Ministerial Working Group shaping the National Plan of Open Science Implementation. So he will present the perspective of Irikaris researchers on open science. Then the second speaker will be Lidia Borell-Damian. She's the Secretary General of Science Europe. This is the association that represents major public research funding organization and research performing organization. And prior to this position, Lidia was involved in European University Association since 2006. And she was later also the Director of Research and Innovation. And she was doctorate in chemistry as a background. Then and she will introduce the policy from the perspective of the funders. The third speaker is the Robert Pergl. He is an associated professor at the Faculty of Information Technology here in the Czech Technical University in Prague. And he is the member of the heads of Node of Elixir in Czech Republic. And he is also an author of the first prototype of the data stewardship wizard. This is the new online tool which takes in account also FAIR principles. And he is nowadays the project coordinator of data stewardship wizard. And the last speaker is the Markie. He's the publishing director from F1000, which is the innovative open access publishing platform, which is offering rapid publication, open peer review, and it's also supporting data deposition and other research outputs. And he played this important role in the design, this open research model of this platform. And first platform was introduced in 2013. And nowadays he is oversee other development of this platform services based on this F1000 and providing to other funders. And one of them is the European Commission new publishing platform Open Research Europe. So these are our speakers. And now I would like to give floor to Oleksandr Berezko from Eurodoc. And his presentation will be about open science from Irikaris research.
Thanks, Eva. Thanks for the introduction. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Oleksandr Berezko, and I'm a general board member at Eurodoc. And I will now tell you some perhaps interesting things on early career researchers' perspectives on publishing in open science. First of all, thanks for organizing such an amazing conference, and thanks for having me. So let me remind you that Eurodoc is an international federation of 28 national organizations from 26 countries of the European Union and the Council of Europe. In 2019, Eurodoc organized an open science ambassadors training, which is a course designed by Garis Uniu and Ivo Grigorov to train researchers in key practices in open science. This course ran from March until August 2019 and was facilitated by Roberta Moscon on an Erasmus Plus staff exchange. A total of 24 ambassadors from various European countries, as you can see, from Portugal to Azerbaijan, were trained and continued their work on promoting open science in Europe. Earlier this year, the European Commission launched Open Research Europe, ORI, an open access publishing platform for Horizon 2020 beneficiaries. I hope that Michael Markie will tell us more about this amazing platform, but the fact is that in last year, Eurodoc, together with Liber and Global Young Academy, was among the organizations subcontracted as expert partners of the ORI project, with the mission to help steer the project and ensure that early career researchers as stakeholders are reached. During their work on the ORI project, Eurodoc volunteers noticed a lack of comprehensive surveys on early career researchers' knowledge and attitudes towards publishing in open science, encompassing the European sub-regions. Furthermore, previous analyses have rarely sought to address the highly variable economic status of European countries, namely the financial resources allocated to science. Due to the fact that Eurodoc operates on the pan-European level and represents a wide network of member organizations acting in many European countries and regions, an opportunity for a survey at the European level emerged. Our survey was open between the 26th of May till the 15th of August last year, a period of about 12 weeks. The total number of valid respondents was more than 1,100 people, and this is comparable to other worldwide and international surveys for researchers. The average age of responders was around 33 years, and more than 77% of them considered themselves early career researchers. So as we can see, that was a really survey for early career researchers, and we can, let's say, more or less trust the results we got, right? Number of responses per country was different for most countries, but the most of responses came from Ukraine, Spain, Germany, Italy, Denmark, Slovenia, and Poland. We used 5 different types of variables to analyze the data we got. So it was European region, gross domestic product per capita, GDP, also gross domestic expenditure on R&D as a percentage of GDP, field of science, and career stage. Let me tell you that we found the most interesting results when analyzing European regions and career stages. For the European regions, we used the division by Jordan because this division takes into account cultural differences among European regions. Unfortunately, we didn't got sufficient number of respondents from Southeastern Europe, and we had to abstain from analyzing this region further in our research. Just one quick note, maybe it would be interesting to everyone. Researchers in Europe typically start peer reviewing when they themselves have finalized published 5 research papers. So I'm just trying now to show you the very few images of the comprehensive survey and the analysis we are working on. We will soon publish the whole report as a research paper in open access, and will disseminate it as widely as we can, so all of you will be able to learn all the results. At the moment, I'm just sharing the specific figures of the paper, and let me specifically thank our colleague and co-author Laura Marcela Palma Medina from Karolinska Institute for her amazing work on the pictures. So from these charts, we can see that in analysis in view of European regions, Western Europe is far and away advanced in their, let's say, awareness and perceptions of open science practices. The least advanced group is, unfortunately, Eastern Europe. Regarding the career stage, there is a positive correlation between scientific experience of respondents, like seniority of position, age group, participation in a Horizon 2020 project, etc., and their awareness, knowledge, and positivity towards open science and specifically open peer review. As the career stage generally reflects researchers' experience, including sophistication in science communication, collaboration, the above result is only logical. However, on the other hand, this might indicate an insufficient open science promotion and training level among early career researchers and their engagement in various open science practices. I will now share the two interesting figures from the paper. So here you can see features of open science considered as the most important. So, of course, open access, open and fair data, and reproducible research are considered the most important. Unfortunately, citizen science is not considered important at all. And open metrics and impact and open licenses are also not considered important enough. This is also strange because you can't, for instance, make data fair without applying a specific open license to the data, right? What is worrying is that, for instance, in Eastern Europe, reproducible research is not considered important at all. And this might lead to even more severe reproducibility crisis in this region, which is a worrying evidence. As you can see from this picture, actually Western Europeans shape, let's say, a frontier of knowledge, because all other regions are within the frames of their shape. Regarding other important question was, what are the most important factors where to publish? And here again, we see three different types of attitudes. We can see that Western Europeans are more into, let's say, open science. Central, Southern, and Northern Europeans are have generally the same attitudes with some slight deviations, and they are in transition from, let's say, normal attitudes to science to open science. And Eastern Europe, and I think that this is the case also for other developing countries, demonstrate completely different attitudes. Let us specifically consider the, let's say, access. So journal impact factor is still, unfortunately, very important for European researchers, especially for those in Southern Europe. Open access to published work is most important to Western Europeans and Central Europeans. Publication fee is extremely important for Eastern Europeans as being the, let's say, least wealthy group, right? Rapidness of publishing and ability to publish all research outputs is most important to Western Europeans. And also high quality peer review. And this is not that important for Eastern Europe, which is also worrying. However, indexing in major citation databases is extremely important for Eastern Europe, because not many journals in this region are even indexed there, right? And advanced scholars among editorial board is perhaps not that important for all European regions. This actually makes us think of three different levels in terms of evolution of needs and focus regarding contemporary scientific publishing. So we came up with the next model with three sequential levels: basic, competitive, and collaborative. On the basic level, the main focus is just to be there, to participate, to be able to publish research outputs in a decent, let's say, publishing venue, journal, platform. And at that level, quantitative bibliometric indicators such a number of published papers, number of indexed papers in major citation databases is the main success indicator. So this level, that's the level for which we can see in Eastern European countries, for instance. Competitive level, which is very common to other European regions, is when researchers focus on individual excellence, right? And the main success indicators are qualitative bibliometric indicators such as ASH index, journal impact factor, etc. Right? So everyone wants to be accepted in prestigious publishing venues, and that's the main success indicator, right? At the collaborative level, researchers focus on collaboration, and they want to achieve impact of their research outputs both outside and inside academia. And the main need at that level is for open, rapid, and flexible publishing infrastructure, such as ORI, for instance, right? So if we try to map European regions on this level, I would say that Eastern Europe is in transition from basic to competitive level. Most European regions and other European regions are in transition from competitive to collaborative level, where Western Europe are the open science champions of the continent, and they are much further than other colleagues. So this model raises two important questions. First, is it possible to skip the competitive level on our way towards research openness? So can we just go directly from the basic to collaborative level, which is a very important question for developing countries? And also, what will the science communication landscape look like after the collaborative level is reached? And what will new predictable challenges might arise, right? So I hope we will publish the whole report soon, and you will be able to access it and use in your institutions and other organizations, maybe on national level, in policy making and decision making. Let me once again advertise our Open Science Ambassadors program. At the moment, we are trying to launch the new course and gather the new cohort. So in case you are interested in becoming an Eurodoc Open Science Ambassador, please follow this link or this QR code and fill in the Google form with your contacts. Once we launch the Eurodoc Open Science Ambassador training, we will notify you and send you an invitation to join. So thanks a lot for your attention. If you have any comments, questions, you are more than welcome to ask. And if you want to approach me directly, you are more than welcome to do so via the channel most suitable for you. Thanks a lot for the attention, and good luck with this amazing conference.
Thank you, Oleksandr. Thank you very much, Oleksandr. And now we will go to the second speaker, and we will leave the question at the end for the discussion. So the second speaker is Lidia Borell-Damian, and she will introduce the perspective of the funders. Yeah. Lidia, can you make the presentation in the presentation mode?
Yes, you cannot see it?
Yeah, we can, but can you put it in the, you can click on the bottom and there is the presentation mode, so we can see the whole screen. You have the notes?
I'm not sure
It's
what you
on
mean.
the bottom. It's on the bottom in your presentation. There is the
Okay. Sorry. Yes, that's what you
yes,
meant.
perfect. Now we can see perfectly.
Sorry. Yes.
Screen is
Okay.
yours.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much, Eva. And thank you very much also for the invitation to participate in this fantastic conference year by year. I am used to be here very often, and I really thank you very much for your constant invitations. It's always a pleasure to address this community, which is very dear to me, because as you know, I have built much of my professional experience in dealing with doctoral education and with research. So it's always a pleasure. And yes, I will give you an overview of how research funding and research performing organizations are implementing open science. I hope that will be helpful for you, and that I will give a specific focus to doctoral training and education and training whenever possible. As I said, I'm speaking from the point of view here of the national organizations. So these are national research organizations, either the funders in your respective countries or the performing organizations in your countries. So they are not universities, they are those are performing, and they are national institutes. We, at the moment, Science Europe has 38 member organizations from 28 countries. It's not EU, because there are some countries that are not EU. And this is what it gives us, the validation of everything that I'm going to say following this short introduction. So open science, I'm sure you all heard about it. This conference has already been also running for one day. I think Eurodoc has a fantastic initiative with these ambassadors for open science. I think this is the right measure to take from your part. And as I will show in my presentation, this is one necessary measure next to many other measures that are necessary to make open science a reality. Of course, open science is about making research and research outputs open, accessible for other researchers as well as for society. It really fosters a collaborative approach more than an individual approach. It's about sharing information with proper considerations to authorships. It is about transparency, etc. And from that perspective, open science seems the most or the best way to make the scientific system more efficient and more reliable as well, and more responsible when is needed, as we have seen, for example, in the case of COVID-19. Eva alluded to some elements of open science at the beginning of this session, and I would like to go a little bit deeper on those. So for us, there is no universal classification of the elements of open science, but a practical classification of that, which I put here in two parts, is what I call a framework part, which is what is needed from a researcher point of view. A researcher needs to have access to research outputs, to the activities, to the tools, to knowledge. It needs to have a proper recognition system of the activity they perform. Needs access to research infrastructures, to supporting infrastructures. It needs good policies, good legislation, and it needs proper investment and financial management. Now, what does it mean in practice? Well, in practice is that you have policies to access to research publications and data that facilitate more or less the process. You have research ethics and integrity codes to follow. You have systems in place to measure the quality of your activities, be it peer review, be it not peer reviewed, etc. You have a research careers more or less well designed in the different countries or institutions. You have face issues on transparency of research process, how far you can go in your transparency, how far is adequate, how far is appropriate, how far is necessary. We have issues on equality, diversity, and inclusion. That is very timely in these days. Open science includes also a public dimension more than not open science, which is public engagement and citizen science. Apart from this overview, this is all underpinned by the research culture, the current research culture and the values. And I will come back on that aspect because it's very important. It really informs everything else. It informs the frameworks and it informs the practice of research. I will show you some examples of what Science Europe does to promote open science. And these are examples that come up out of the internal discussions within Science Europe members, as I said, performers and funders of research. And the outputs of our work are positions, guidelines, recommendations with the aim to making open science a reality. And not only a reality, the new normal. In that sense, I think that we can complement very well our efforts with all the stakeholders, and including, of course, Eurodoc. So we have guidelines on open access to research publications, on research data sharing and data management. We contribute to EU legislation, all the past copyright, data protection regulation, but all the regulation that is coming up now regarding the Data Act and the Data Act governance and everything that relates to the digital agenda in the EU, because one of our main concerns with all this dossier, legislative dossier, is that the Commission is legislating a lot on industry related to industry and business sector. And we feel, no, it's a reality. The research sector is not always there in its own right. And it's like an add-on or like something that is not really relevant when in fact it really is. Apart from the legislation, we also help to coordinate policies. For example, the open access principles that were generated now back in 2013 and the Plan S principles that were generated in 2018. I will explain a little bit more about it. Importantly, we have a very good line of research on research assessment within our own institutes and organizations. We have also guidelines on ethics and integrity, which we will further review, and a new priority, which we called research culture, and that we are now starting to develop fully in the framework of the new strategy of Science Europe. Now, regarding research publications, we have a long history. I'm sure that many of you would have followed. We have a long history on not only on principles, but also on disclosure of fees, so the transparency, open access to academic books, and our more recent publication is about open access monitoring and how the institutions, research funding and performing organizations can monitor open access, and how, importantly, how and what to monitor. So if you are interested, I recommend you that you read this guideline on open access monitoring if you want to get the fresher ideas of national organizations in monitoring open access. We have also a long history on research data management. I'm sure that several of you would have seen our guidelines for supporting research data management. And the newest one, in fact, is the one that we presented in January this year. It was the second edition of the practical guide to international alignment on research data management. There were 3 chapters in the previous one. As you can see, the purple data management plans, the orange, the trustworthy repositories, and the blue guidance for researchers. So again, I recommend you that you read that part, especially for you. But also in 2021, we issued the second edition, as I said, with including guidance for reviewers. I can only recommend that you also read that part, just so that you understand the point of view from those that would be reviewing your data management plans. Then very recently, in June 2021, we issued a practical guide to sustainable research data. What is the difference with the research data management plans? Well, because one thing is the research data management plan that you can draft in your own research, and something different is what is going to happen with your data, how it's going to be stored, maintained, and put forward for use or reuse for others, and to what degree this data will be interoperable, and importantly, for how long and how much it will cost. Therefore, we have developed together with the Science Europe organizations this guide aiming at institutions, not at researchers for now. This is aimed at institutions, meaning research funding organizations, research performing organizations, and research infrastructures as a key element providing precisely the access, use, and reuse of data. So this guideline proposes 6 areas for institutions to look at and to draft their own institutional data agendas. That's the way we have called them. And it is interesting for institutions to take stock of where they are now, to what extent they want to engage in the sustainability of research data, and the different stages. This is all classified in 6 main areas, as you can see them listed here: organizational engagement, policy environment, financial aspects, training, including training to researchers, technical preparedness, and communication and awareness raising. These have been developed with people in performing organizations, funding organizations, and in research infrastructures, as well as with other experts from other areas. And in this sense, we're very happy to say that these guidelines, even before they were published, they were already taken into account, and with other initiatives in the Research Data Alliance, and by Ferris Fair and by the European Open Science Cloud, and mutually, we were also taking into account their developments. So I think that there's a very good ambience in the stakeholder environment to issue guidelines that are complementary, that are not repetitive, and that they are as coherent as possible. And very pleased to say that not the sustainable research data, that's very recent, but the research data management plan guidelines, they were recommended as good practice in Horizon Europe applications. Here is an example of what can happen in a certain discipline, because of course I have been talking very generically. Then when you all go back to your labs and to your studies, you have your own specific field with your specific ways of working and protocols to follow. This is an example proposed by DANS in the Netherlands on how you could use different guidelines at different levels. So you have the research data management plan, which would have a set of guidelines that are common to any field, but then you would have, that's like the blue part of this triangle, then you have a part, the green part, which would be your specific standards and methodologies in your own field, and then you would have another part, which is what is specific to your project. So we think that structuring this in these 3 levels when you conceive your data management plans can help. And here is an example in the archaeological field. I will now move on to talk a little bit about the European Open Science Cloud. Probably many of you have heard about it. Probably many of you don't know exactly what it is. I have to say that I don't even know yet exactly what it is, but I'm exaggerating a little bit, sorry. No, but it is an excellent initiative led by the European Commission to link, used the word federation, so to federate data infrastructures from all over Europe, so that researchers have at one series of clicks away from their computer to access a vast network on research data infrastructures with interoperable data, and without having to move away from your desk. So this is now starting to walk after several years of preparation. It has been set up as a partnership, European partnership in the framework of Horizon Europe. And it was one of the partnerships that had unanimous support from member states. So I'm sure that Eurodoc is somehow part of the European Open Science Cloud. And if I also encourage you to find out more information about the benefits that the European Open Science Cloud can bring to your research. A few words about Plan S. I'm sure that also many of you have heard about Plan S. They are based on 10 principles. They were published in 2018. And at the moment, there are 26 research funding organizations, not only from Europe, although 15 are from Europe, that are now implementing open access to research publications since January 2021. That means that implementing or mandating publication in open access journals from all grants approved from January 2021. There is a tool that is called the Journal Checker tool, where you can use to check whether the journal where you want to publish is compliant or not with Plan S. And there are also a series of declarations issued by the Plan S funding agencies, promoting transparency of costs and also providing deadlines as to how much they can fund to publish in journals that are not open access, and that until 2024. That's the deadline that they have set up to really make a move towards open science. I would like to remind that as part of the principles and some subsequent statements and clarifications that have been issued, Plan S wants to facilitate open access of any route, gold, green, diamond, any other routes that may emerge. As long as it is open access, the Plan S does not dictate one route for open access. And very importantly, Plan S also advocates for the intrinsic merit of every publication instead of measuring the quality through journal impact factors or similar proxy indicators. You may have heard yesterday or read the statement of the European Research Council yesterday, also promoting this way of assessing research outcomes and subscribing to the DORA principles, which I think it is a very good move for the scientific community. Last but not least, last part of my talk is to mention the recommendations on research assessment for project selection. I presented them last year, so I will be extensive on that. However, I would like to highlight one thing here, which is about how organizations understand quality. So this is just to hint to the fact that we all talk about quality, we all talk about excellence, but we could see in the survey from Science Europe that 62% of organizations do not have a formal definition of what research quality is. There are several approximative concepts like theoretical rigor, academic significance, impact, methodology, productivity, etc. But they are not a very formal definition. Not that we need it, but maybe it's a point that we need to reflect upon. And in fact, you may link here probably to what you have heard from the Commission and their intentions to reform research assessment. So for the sake of time, I will skip this slide. You will have it anyway in your presentation. These are the 7 recommendations that we issued last year about research assessment. Maybe only to highlight the last part, the novel approaches, where we recommend institutions to engage in pilot tests where they can have they can test new methodologies while respecting the old one, so they can have a rigorous approach, if I may talk like that, to research assessment, and make sure that any novel approaches that they develop do respect the excellence that everybody wants to see in the research system. Now, finally, a call for action. As I said before, we are happy that there are many connections now with other organizations in the field. I would like to say that, yes, that's very good, but we cannot just be happy with what we have. We need to foster more interconnection between the research stakeholders and foster a coherent and rigorous approach to open science, to be able to kind of, remove the barriers towards open science. Coming back to my beginnings of this talk, when I referred to the underpinning elements of research culture in what is open science and what is research, we, Science Europe, we are engaging in a new priority on research culture. And in fact, we would like to promote a broad culture or cultures within research, however, respecting a core set of principles and values, which we will develop in the coming months. And I plan to involve also Eurodoc in our dialogue. So my final remarks is that open science is today best way to ensure the optimal use of research investment and research output by the public sector. It really, of course, it requires some investment and some change of mindset, especially the way research is conceived, performed, and assessed. But overall, it does benefit the research mission. It enhances its processes, it makes it all more transparent, and very importantly, it fosters the many multidisciplinary approaches that are needed to face the challenges that require research, such as, of course, climate change, health. We cannot say enough on that. I think that doctoral education have a specific mission to play, if I may talk like that. Mission in the sense that it is the place where researchers start their education and training. It is the place where open science should be put at front and be an intrinsic part of that period of the life of a researcher. We have seen that this is possible because we have seen it in COVID-19. So prior to COVID-19, this is the good side of an unfortunate story, has demonstrated that open science is possible. So we need now to use this as a leverage to make it really wide. And last but not least, to reiterate my point that more concerted action between research stakeholders is necessary to make the open science the new normal, and especially in doctoral education and training. And I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Lidia, for your presentation. Thank you very much. And now we will go to the third speaker. It's Robert Pergl, who will introduce the data management tool. And the topic is he will introduce the topic. Robert, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you for organizing such a great event full of interesting information. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Robert Pergl. I'm from Czech Technical University in Prague, and I will speak about a specific tool, the Data Stewardship Wizard, that can help you planning for fair open science. So I will speak a little bit about its motivation for such a tool, brief overview of features, how you can start using it, and where you can learn more then. So you heard now very important information about open science and about its principles and what to do. But you may ask, okay, so where do I start? How do I do that? And this is where our tool comes in. Its goal is to take you from feeling overwhelmed by these requirements and needs and new trends to going to benefit from them and help also the research society benefit from your research. And for that, you need something like a good fire plan, where you know the steps and needed resources. So to make operational this knowledge, and you want to avoid forgetting something important. So in the end, the tool to do that is planning, data management planning, that tells you what, why, and how to do. And it sometimes is perceived as a burden just to satisfy a funder to submit a data management plan, but this is not our take. Our take is that this is really something that should be also for yourself to guide you and do good research. So we designed a tool I will be speaking about that is for beginners up to data stewards, for all levels of users, and it's also focuses on extensive customizations for your specific needs and needs of your organization to make the most of it. So it tackles two challenges. The first is the question, how do you know your data management plan is good? And in every endeavor, you go through these four steps gradually. So, for example, if you want to learn how to drive a car, first you can see everybody drives a car. So it must be something that's easy. So you don't know that you don't know. And then you go to the driving school and you find out that this is really hard. There are a lot of things you need to do, and you start being consciously incompetent. So you know that, oh my God, I cannot do that. This is overwhelming. But when you start learning, then you have a good instructor. Then you start to manage things and you become consciously competent. So you know what to do and you do it. But it still takes you some effort to focus. And after some time, it becomes your second nature and you become unconsciously competent. So you do these things automatically. And this is the path that you take on every new skills, data management planning included. And Data Stewardship Wizard will have your back in all these stages. And especially now, most of the researchers are beginning with the first steps. So they don't know how much things they actually need to learn. And the second challenge is that this is a vast knowledge that must be handled to make a good data management plan. There are a lot of topics to handle. So, for example, Rob Hoofd, our collaborator and co-author of Data Stewardship Wizard, from the content perspective, from Elixir Netherlands, he made a mind map that takes you through this vast knowledge. And it's a complex decision tree, about 600 nodes, which was overwhelming for the researchers. So we together formed a team and we made a tool that helps with this. So the tool is focused on three principles, three classes of features to guide you, to enable learning, and also to make you effective in the usage. Its main idea is a pilot's checklist, where pilots use these checklists to really make sure they don't forget something important before the flight. And in our tool, this is in the form of a smart questionnaire that makes like conversation with you. I know questionnaires sound scary because everybody wants to fill you questionnaires and they are boring and they are nuisance, but this is different types of questionnaire. This is more like a conversation with an expert that asks you questions, gives you recommendations, and also based on your answers, it also asks you just relevant questions. So, for example, if you say if there is no pre-existing data here, it will not ask you about the details of that. So each question has a specific structure. There is a brief explanation that explains what you are being asked. There is usually a choice of option, so it takes the hard task of writing down essay like DMP. You just ask usually from preselected ghost questions, which makes it easier for you. And also there are indications about FAIR metrics. I will speak about FAIR and these metrics a little bit more later. And also it gives you references to external links where you can learn more and can help build these competencies. And there are also some nice features such as project phases, so you don't need to answer all the questions before the project. Some of them may become relevant, for example, before finishing the project, so you can leave them later. This is also different to typical questionnaire that asks you to answer everything because you can submit your answers. No, here it's like a gradual step-by-step discourse with the tool. And most important, it gives you recommendations. So based on your answer, there are not good or bad answers or permissible, not permissible answers. Every answer just has a certain consequences that you should be aware of. And this is what the tool gives you, this information. As for the learning part, apart from the links to the resources, it's tightly bound with the book of Professor Barendmont's Data Stewardship Wizard for Open Science, Data Stewardship for Open Science, Implementing FAIR Principles, which is one of the best books here, and it has clear structure of what's up, do, don't, and this is really like most of the questions in the so-called basic knowledge model I will speak about later is bound to these sections of the book. So for almost all the questions you can invoke such a screen where you can read about the topic and what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and why. Then to further evaluate your plan is you can use metrics. Some of them were seen here. So when you are answering, you can already see some indications about, for example, this FAIR metric called findability, where green badge means you are doing very well to support this principle, and different colors indicate how good you do that. And then in the end, or even in the progress, you can check the metrics in such graph where you can see some scores for the metrics. These are metrics of findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability. That are these FAIR metrics. And we have two other metrics, which is good DMP practice in general, and also openness. Why openness? Because FAIR doesn't mean open. This is one of the frequent misconceptions. But if you look at the FAIR principles, there are 14 principles that guide you to make your research fair. This becomes more or less like a buzzword lately, but these are really useful things. But there is nothing about open here. There are things that make your research findable, so other people can find the results, access them through some protocol, but also through license. And this is where this difference between open and FAIR comes in, because, for example, if you would be doing research with sensitive data, you cannot make it open. So this is why the best practice says as open as possible, as close as necessary. And sometimes you just cannot provide the data, but you can provide metadata. So people can learn that you have done the research, and they can, for example, ask you about the license and how they can get these data and so on and so on. This is the reason of FAIR principles. Then making data interoperable and in the end reusable. So there's not time here to go into the details. Some of you already may be fluent in FAIR principles. If you want to learn more, you can go to the link and learn about what FAIR is and why is it important, how to do that. And again, using the data stewardship wizard gives you a tool how you can evaluate yourself against these principles. Then there are these effectivity and effectiveness features. I will just really fast skim through them. So there are autocomplete answers that populate the answers from different registries, such as the registry of funders and so on. You can do online, you can do sharing and collaboration, as you are used, for example, in Google Docs. You can even do like online collaboration, so you can collaborate online on filling your DMP with, for example, your institutional data steward or with other researchers. You can mark some questions as to do to come to them later. You can manage history of your plans against inspiration from Google tools. You can also name the versions and return to the older versions. Then when you are done and ready to submit data management plan, you can select from various templates. We have the Science Europe template that Lidia mentioned. So what the tool does, it assembles the answers you gave and it makes this document, PDF document, where it does also the narrative for you. So especially if you are not native speaker and you struggle with English a little bit, then it does the heavy lifting for you. There is also a Horizon 2020 template, and other templates may be done by users or data stewards. I mentioned that the tool is highly customizable. The customization can be done on all levels of the various chapters, the questions and the different types, the answers, the references, also something we call tags that are used, for example, to select just some of the questions that are, for example, necessary for the Science Europe template and omit others because there are many more questions that are usually not asked by the funders. And so on. And you can also make your own integrations to make autocomplete. And this is actually called something that is called a knowledge model that makes effectively a skeleton template for the questionnaire that you saw. And then you can do these customizations either from the scratch, so you can create your own knowledge model, or you can take an existing one, such as the one that we have by default, made by Rob de Hooft, and you can just make, for example, institutional or country-based customizations. So how to start with the wizard? It's easy. You can just go to the web page, and you can start playing around. If you are a researcher and you just want to do your data management plan, there is a researchers instance where you just sign in, and you can start doing your plans, and you can use it for the serious work. If you happen to be data steward, or you want to change some things such as these questions and answers, you can either go to the demo instance where you have all the features available, but it's not used for it's not meant for serious usage, because it's like a playground where everybody can see everybody. And for serious use, then we recommend for organizations to install their own self-managed instance such as is now the case in Czech Republic in many universities, such as the chemistry and biology instance and so on. And we can also host cloud versions for organizations. So it's always best like to ask around if your organization has already their local instance, or there may be a national instance, and so on. So if you are interested about some details about the running instances, you can also check the web, and also your institution may already provide an instance. Then if you want to learn more about the features, then we have feature overview. Then there are resources for learning more about these various features, such as webinars, workshops, presentations, publications, and posters on our web. And if you already worked with some other tool for data management planning, such as, for example, the popular tool DMP Online, you can check the differences in our comparison chart, where you see the various pros and cons of the most used tools, and with the respect to the data stewardship wizard. So this is the team. I'm especially I mentioned this Rob Hove, the knowledge expert in Elixir Netherlands, and then the rest is the Czech team here in Elixir Czech Republic. And we have also quite a lot of collaborators already around the world who are many active. So there's already quite some nice community in many countries. So thank you very much for listening to this brief overview. If you are interested and you have any questions for me either now or later, please don't hesitate and write to us to our email. You can also subscribe for the newsletter, where you will be informed about new features and events. And also we have a Twitter channel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Robert, for your great. So thank you. And now we will give floor to the fourth speaker, Michael Markie, and he will talk about the new open access publishing platforms and how can practice open science through these new platforms. Michael, the floor is yours. You can, yeah, you are okay.
Thank you very much, Eva. And once again, thank you for the Eurodoc community for inviting me to the conference again. I work very closely with people like Eva and Oleksandr and Julia, and it's been a very enjoyable time working on Open Research Europe. So what I want to talk about first is why we publish openly, and give the reasons at the start of this, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about how one might publish in an open science way, and then also discuss how one might go about using something like the Open Research Europe platform. So the first thing that I wanted to cover was what are the open science benefits for PhD candidates. So the first thing that I wanted to mention was around preprints, i.e. sharing work before it is published in a journal. This is a really good thing to do for PhD candidates, particularly for upcoming grant proposals and job applications, and demonstrating some of the work that you have before it has been published. So I think preprints are a very important method of publication. We also want to think about sharing other things rather than just an article. So methodologies, any software that is created, or any underlying data enables people to see how you've got to results, and then enables people to easily build upon findings. So that kind of idea of standing on the shoulders of giants and building upon each other's work can only really happen when we're being more open. Publishing in open access journals, I think this is definitely going to become the norm in the next 5 to 10 years. But still, open access choices should be your first choice, because what does it do? It means more people can see it, more people can get it. You get a wider audience, so not just people who have access, and also the usage, i.e. downloads and views of your work, is completely enhanced by publishing in an open access way. There's also been some studies done around citation advantages of papers when you link to your research data. So as you might expect, people are really interested in not just the paper, but also the data that makes up the results. So if you share that, it's more likely that someone is going to cite your paper because they've really looked into the research. Open peer review, which I'll also talk about a little later, it really enables a constructive dialogue with other experts. Peer review in traditional journals can be a bit of a rough ride, particularly for early career researchers. And the process itself has turned more into rejecting and accepting papers, whereas what one would think is peer review should really be for sharing ideas and helping one improve their research. So open peer review is helping do that because more accountability is being made from the reviewers. And then for me, one of the most important things that we've seen in the last 2 years is that it's open science that has benefited society. Without open science and early sharing of research, we wouldn't have got to a vaccine as quickly for the COVID-19 pandemic. And what it's demonstrated to me is, why don't we do this for every single disease? Because if we share our ideas and build upon them, we can get to a more positive result much more quickly. So instead of putting these at the end, I've wanted to talk about, this is why we should do it. And I think, we've heard lots of talks previously about why we should do it. I just want to talk a little bit more about how we can do it. So I've got some slides that I'm just going to go through, but for me, in my opinion, we have to change our publishing mindset. How the publishing system is set up at the moment is we fit our research to a specific journal which has specific ideas of what should happen for that article to be published. And it's all based around journal impact factor and prestige. And so all of the research that somebody does eventually gets kind of squeezed and squashed and put into a journal article, which may be about 5 or 6 article pages, and it's published, and everybody is really publishing to enable themselves to get a journal impact factor. That's not the way research works, and that's not how I think publishing should work. I think publishing should work a little bit more like the second image, whereas we should be fitting our publishing around the research that we do. And that means not just the final results, but also how we got to those results. Did we get any results that were positive? Did we get any results that were negative? So there has to be a change in the publishing mindset. And that's something I'll discuss later with Open Research Europe, which I'm working with the European Commission on. But how to publish research openly, I've kind of got 4 major things just to keep in mind for PhD candidates that will enable you to start publishing or thinking about being more open with your research. So the first is sharing work early and openly. Journals were once the only place where you could share your research, and because of the printing press, they would then be sent in kind of print format so someone could read one another's work. That was the technological advance in the 50s and the 60s, etc., when journal publishing really took off. That's not the case anymore. We have something called the internet, and we're enabled to share research in lots of different ways and at any different point. And the other thing that the journal is it's a static container. Now, research is dynamic, and so we should be able to publish dynamically. So I think the idea of just publishing in journals is a little bit antiquated, and I think that we now need to start sharing our work openly. So researchers can do this by sharing preprints and sharing their data early in repositories. This is fine. You can still publish in a journal afterwards, but the idea is that you're sharing work openly. You're putting your name to it. You're putting a flag in the sand to say, this is the work I'm doing. But what that enables you to do is ask for some community feedback and use your networks and build networks around your work. And what you can also do is update, revise, and iterate work. So if you do get feedback, you can then update, you can then revise your work and make sure that it's then got other feedback from the rest of the communities. The next thing I want to talk about is providing the supporting information. So as I think we've discussed across this session, we really do need to enable others to reproduce work. And to do that, the only way you can do that is to add methods and data and all the other things that are associated with it. But as we've just heard as well, it's really important to provide relevant metadata. So if you provide data, if there's a specific software program or any specific parameters that need to be used to access and make the best use of that data, you need to provide that. So in this provide support information section, I'm just saying provide as much information as you can, and that means others can then really start engaging with that work. And the same goes for authorship. So now lots of publishers use something called the credit taxonomy, where you can tell the community what each author has contributed to an article. So instead of just the person who submits the article or the corresponding author, it's great to be able to now say that a particular author had a particular job with regards to that paper, maybe the methodology side of things, and they can get some credit for that. Maximizing research objects. So I'm going to have a slide a bit later on about this, so I won't cover it in too much detail. But not everything is a positive result, and you don't just have to publish 1 or 2 articles that are positive results. We can share information about the planning stage, the data collection phase, the analysis phase, and I'll show a slide on that later. And what we do here is we reduce research waste by making things available about all of the process and everything that we've done. We're able to stop others potentially doing things that we're working on or haven't worked, but we also then enable our funders and the public society who pay for a lot of the research to get the maximum amount of the benefit. And then finally, I just wanted to talk about ensure that you publish in an open access way. So publishing in venues which are open access, as I mentioned, means that you will certainly get more people looking at your work. Sharing in trusted repositories. So as we heard in the previous talk, sharing in repositories that are subject specific or a national repository means that they can be easily found. And it also means that they would then be federated in things like the European Open Science Cloud. So really have a look about where you're putting your data and make sure that it really is going into a repository that is certified. And then one big thing I think that is a good thing to do to be open is share your work widely. Now that might be on social media, it might be through a preprint, it might be through things such as ResearchGate, but you really want to be open about anything that you've published and encourage feedback, because that really will enable more people to see your work. So I'm just going to cover a case study of Open Research Europe, which Oleksandr mentioned at the start. And it kind of brings in all of these kind of how to publish openly features that I've just spoken about. So the core principles of Open Research Europe is rapid access to research. So everything published there is completely CC BY, completely open, fully text and data mineable. Everyone can use it, and it's there for a public good. Its editorial process is not judged on impact. It really is based upon objective checks. So these checks are to check for ethics, publishing policies, making sure that they meet community standards, and making sure that the data is made available. But no one is making a decision on whether something should be published or not based on the content. It's really what the scientific methodology has been used. It's a completely transparent and accountable process. So we have open peer review, where the peer reviewers have to say who they are, they have to publish their reports, and we really encourage a dialogue between the authors and reviewers to discuss the paper, not for a reviewer to say yes or no, but for an author to say, for a reviewer to say, sorry, this is what I've seen and this is what I think. And then finally, to link with a lot of the talks we've had today, Open Research Europe endorses the FAIR principles. It has a fair principles open data policy. So the policy is based around FAIR, and we use that as a framework under the open as possible, closed as necessary approach. So it's a very open science, or as we call it, open research publishing platform. So how that works, and I'll just briefly go through this, is an article gets submitted. It then goes through our editorial checks, which take around 10 days for completion. We then typeset the article pretty much like a traditional journal, but we then publish it as a preprint alongside any data in a trusted repository. So that's a very quick, rapid process to get this kind of early feedback. It's clearly labeled, but it's awaiting peer review, so readers know that. And then as soon as it is published, it undergoes the peer review process. So the peer review process, as soon as a report or a reviewer reviews the article, that is published online next to the article, so readers can see both the article and the review. And they can also update their articles based on the reviews. So this is the first way of publishing that isn't static. It's a versionable system where articles can be updated based on reviewers' decisions, but also updated if there's any new data that needs to be made available. So it's a much more internet-based publishing mode. And once the reviews have come in and there's a criteria for passing peer review, then the article is deemed as passed, and it then gets sent to indexing databases like PubMed and Scopus and places like that. So the whole publishing model is a mixture of pre-printing, open data, and then it is published and then made available just like a traditional research journal. So it really is trying to test the waters and build a new way of publishing for the Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe fundees. This is just coming back to my maximizing the research objects point I was trying to make, and I'm not going to go through this whole slide, but what I've kind of drawn here is a timeline of what typically happens in a kind of research process. When we think about the concept, we then move to the planning, we then do our data collection of some sort, we then analyze that data, and then we reflect on what we've done here. What I want to do here is just show you all the different types of research articles that can be published along the whole research continuum. So when you're coming up with your concept, maybe you want to do a review or a systematic review, that is publishable and you can share that. When you're planning, you might want to do a study protocol so people can see what your design is and get feedback on it. And that also relates to registered reports. During the data collection, you can publish just data sets and link them to your article later on. You can publish methodologies and small findings. And then when you come to the analysis, sometimes if you have already published that type of research early on, it makes it easier to write your research article or your monograph. And then you can also do reflections on it in things such as publishing policy briefs or opinions and essays on your work. So I just wanted to demonstrate that it's not just a research article that can be the output of your research. And this is something that the European Commission are working on with Open Research Europe, is to try and ensure that all the funding that they give, they're getting the maximum amount of published research from that funding. And then just as a snapshot, Open Research Europe has been publishing now for 4 months. And the Commission really wanted to expand the choice of outputs that researchers have to share their ideas. But they also want to use this open science publishing model to accelerate the time from discovery to dissemination. So in this pie chart, I'm showing that 60% are still traditional research articles, because that's what everybody typically publishes. But 40% of the research on the platform is different types of articles, such as methods and software tools. So we really are seeing the Horizon 2020 fundees use the platform to publish different types of research. Currently, from final submission to being published, it's 9 days. So it's a very quick process to get the first preprint out. And then from going from being published to passing peer review, it's just maybe a month and a half, 36 and a half days, which is very, very quick. And what we find is that, sharing these other parts of the research encourages reviewers to look at the work and review that. So this all sounds easy, right? The answer is no, and I think Lidia touched on some of these points as well, but I think it's worth really taking in is that this is probably the way we should publish. However, credit is still focused on where you publish and not what you publish. So with the impact factor, things are changing. I think the University of Utrecht announced that they would not be looking at impact factor for their grant proposals and tenure, which is a great step. Yesterday, the European Research Council signed up to DORA, which means they are also not actively going to be promoting the impact factor for grant proposals, which is great. So there is change happening, but still mainly institutes around Europe are looking at where you publish and not what types of research you're publishing. So there's some work to be done there. And I was really happy to see that Science Europe are going to be doing a kind of research culture program in 2022, because I think that's very key to what we're wanting to do. Training and education. There's a lot of talk about moving towards open science, but I actually find that there's not enough knowledge and skills for PhD candidates, but also for other researchers about how to do this, when to do this, and kind of, policy comes out and nobody's really been prepared for making their research meet these open science policies. So I think there needs to be much more training. And then there needs to be the big thing, the culture change. Generationally, I think, the PhD candidates now are in the right position to push for a change. I do think that the generation now are already in a system where they are used to trying to publish in high impact factor journals and don't necessarily see open science as an important way for research to improve. And that's my final message, really. I've been working in open science now for around 10 years. And what I don't want to see happen, which I think it could happen if we don't start shifting the culture, is open science just becomes performative, i.e. an extra task that everybody does and nobody gets any credit for it. I think you should get just as much credit for publishing a really well done reproducible study than something that is published in a high impact factor journal. So we have to start trying to change the culture, and it's a mixture of policy, it's a mixture of the publishers providing different ways, but more importantly, it's an opportunity for younger researchers to discuss how they want to share their research. So I shall leave it there, and yeah, looking forward to any questions if there are any. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Markie. Thank you very much for all the exciting presentation, and which covered the most important topics, as we had already from tomorrow, that open science is also one of the key priority for European University Association, so for all European university, but it's also not only priority for Europe, but also at the global level, because there will be soon the UNESCO recommendation on open science. So it's really something that regards researcher and especially doctoral candidates should be prepared. And this is not the case. Also, as Oleksandr presented in his first presentation, there are still many researchers that are not aware on open science, and they are not yet trained on how to manage the research data. And there is also the European directive, this was mentioned by Lidia, that this is especially if the results are from publicly funded money, that it should be available if there are not some constraints. So thank you very much, all the presenters. And now I would like to ask, maybe firstly here in the audience, if there will be some question. Yeah, I can see one question. So Magali, yeah, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, so I'm Magali. I'm a doctoral candidate at the University of Clermont.
Can you hear?
It's a little quiet.
I'll speak louder. So I'm a doctoral candidate in France and a French delegate from the CGC, so the French National Association. And it was a bit brought up, but I was wondering that, so good quality research methods are not always followed by like groundbreaking results. There are also negative results. And so how is it possible to publish those negative results, and how will it affect careers?
Yeah, I mean, I can answer one part of that. I think you're completely right that negative results are just as important as positive results in some places, and you can publish negative results. F1000, our publishing platforms do that, but typically some of the high impact journals don't accept negative results. Their kind of criteria and aims and scope is based on novel research, which moves the field on, which I think is possibly incorrect, because sometimes this novel research hasn't had the rigor in some of the methods, etc. And because they don't share that, it's quite difficult to understand. So I think a way forward for some of the more high impact journals, if they don't want to publish negative results, that they do make sure that there's open science practices with regards to the data, etc. But I think that, if we do start moving into more publishing platforms which aren't based upon what you publish, we will start seeing more negative results get the credit that they deserve. But currently, I think the culture is to publish positive, which is incorrect.
Thank you, Michael. Now I will ask one question from the Q&A section. So I will read it also for the audience here. So I'm fully from Alistair, I'm fully in favor of open sharing, free sharing, and collaboration rather than the competitiveness. I also believe in high quality research. How can we make open science happen while maintaining the quality without simply allowing the private sector, for example, the big publisher, to increase the volume of resources it takes from the public university sector, as has happened with the journals? Maybe Lidia?
Yes, I was thinking, I'm not sure I fully understand the question, because I think it means in favor of open sharing, free sharing, and collaboration rather than competition, I would say, no? Instead of competitiveness. But then I don't really understand, what does it mean, how we can make open science happen without simply allowing the private sector to increase the volume of resources?
I think that is meaning that many rigorous researchers, they see as like to make the research publication open, that is, they have to pay additional money. And many of them, they don't see maybe what is already paid in the subscription. So for them it's an issue, because they receive the funding and they have to put some money they have to spend, they could spend on the research, they have to spend on the I think this was intended in this way. So they see.
Yeah, I think that's, and I guess that's some of what is in the Plan S core principles, that we are trying to move towards journals being more transparent about the costs around publishing. And from, I think, 2022 next year, that we're going to have to see, or publishers are at least going to have to share what those costs are and how they have come up with those costs. So the other thing I think is, publishers have a kind of monopoly on the market. What the European Commission is doing with F1000 Research is using us as a service provider. We're giving them full transparency of what costs are, etc., which are all published online. And the idea is that it's a platform that the Commission have control over. They can help support the open science principles that they want to operationalize. And I think, what publishers need to do is move more into being in the service business rather than gatekeepers, because that's what's holding things back. So I think the quality can be given to institutions and outside of the private sector, but there is still a service that needs to be provided, and I think it's working in collaboration with publishers to make that happen.
Thank you, Markie.
Yeah, I would say maybe I can now answer better the question. Yeah, I think that indeed I agree with what Michael said. It is about the changing of the concept of what the publisher does and why it does it, and it is about, as I said in my talk, giving back to the academic sector the assessment of the quality, concentrate on the pure quality of the piece that is being assessed, and then pay only for the real added value service that the publishers provide. And that requires strong policies, because that is not, unfortunately, is not mainstream now. So it requires strong policies by governments, by institutions, all leading towards that concept of what is making a research result public. It is about reconsidering the way we approach the publication and dissemination of research results.
Thank you, Lidia. And I can see other question from the audience, not from the audience, from the online. It's Thomas Caspari. So can we put him as a panelist, please? Thomas?
Yes, I'm switching on my microphone, my camera. Yeah, thank you very much. It took a second for the system to switch. I really enjoyed this session. So I'm based in Salzburg at the Medical University. And I do have, I'm not quite sure whether it's a question, but a comment for Michael. I really like the idea to publish negative results. And I teach philosophy of science, and Karl Popper basically claimed that we only can test a hypothesis by actually trying to falsify it. And I would like to suggest to go one step further, that actually good scientific publishing would mean to design an experiment on purpose that aims to falsify the idea or the hypothesis which is going to be published. And this should be part of the supplementary materials. Not just basically put in negative evidence, which just happens to be negative. No, design an experiment which actually tries to disprove your claim you want to publish. If your claim survives this, you're fine. It's not a question, sorry, but I wanted to say this because it's very close to my heart, and I really enjoyed your contribution, Michael. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for the comment, Thomas. And it's something that I've been working on actually for a few years in something called a registered report, where you say exactly what you're going to do, exactly the process, and regardless of the results, it still gets published. So I think we could start moving to the fact that someone's done a really good study design, and even if it's exploratory research, even if it's something that's a little more non-exploratory, and then you get the publication regardless of what happens, and you set out what you were going to do, and regardless of results, it gets published. And that's something we're working on towards as well, which I think is a really good way of doing science, because the credit is given downstream, not upstream.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you. And we have another question from Brian Cully from the Q&A section. So the leading institution in Europe, Science Europe, LERU, and so on, seems to be well prepared for the requirements for open science, data management plans, fair data, and etc. However, how can we ensure that less well-resourced research institutions or countries are not further excluded from the competitive research funding? Do we need more initiative like Stewardship Visa? Oleksandr?
Yes, if I may, thanks for this comment, for this question, Brian. And yes, exactly. Data stewardship wizard is a perfect example, but there can be other. And I suggest that, let's say, communities and countries which are not that wealthy and resourceful, for instance, they explore the opportunities existing. For instance, at the moment, I'm a manager of an Erasmus Plus capacity building project in the field of higher education called Optima, Open Practices, Transparency and Integrity for Modern Academia. And it was a chance for Ukraine to use European Union funding to bring open science practices to Ukraine, to higher education institutions in Ukraine. Also, today we already mentioned Eurodoc Open Science ambassadors, and I have already showed this map from Portugal to Azerbaijan. So that's also a good opportunity. So I would suggest that, yes, we really need more initiatives. And I encourage everyone interested in the countries which lack this expertise to, let's say, open their eyes as wide as possible and look for the opportunities, because they do exist. And do not hesitate to come up to Eurodoc for some advice and guidance, if it makes sense.
Thank you, Oleg. So we can see other questions from Katarina Sidlinska.
Yeah, maybe before we go to another question, if I may add, I fully agree to what Oleksandr said. And from the perspective of research funding and performing organizations in Science Europe, I think another way to avoid that is to engage them all in this dialogue so that they are always in contact with the practices, the front runners, be there from whatever region they are. Even in most advanced countries, you also have parts of the advanced countries where they are lagging behind. So I think that engagement of all European partners is very important.
Thank you, Lidia. So can we go to the Katarzyna Slińska comments? She's asking if there are any specific criteria or guidelines for social sciences field regarding open data, because she sees a problem, for example, with anonymization of research participants. And I would like maybe also to add to Robert Pergl, how this data stewardship wizard, how fields, for example, to the social sciences.
So this is related to the feature that I mentioned, the customization of the knowledge model, and the idea is that not only institutions, as I mentioned, but also the different science branches should make their own customizations, and this is already happening a little bit. So, for example, we are aware that proteomics group of life science, they are like doing their own customized knowledge model, where they like cut off some questions that are not relevant for them and make it more specific about their branch. So, for example, the answers about where do you put your data, they just limited to the well-known proteomics databases to help the users make a choice. And I'm not aware now that there would be some like active work in the social science community, but this would be really welcome. And of course, this is a matter of someone to stepping out and doing this work, going through this core knowledge model and selecting some subparts that are relevant and making possibly more questions and tune the answers for the branch. And our experience is that it's best done in a community fashion. For example, organizing some hackathon during some online event. For example, in life science, these biohackathons, and I'm pretty sure that other branches also have this, where people meet and with some topic and they collaboratively work on something. So we would really love to see more focused knowledge models in the branches. And also, I didn't mention that in my presentation, there is an online registry. If you register to the data stewardship wizard, you also get the access to the registry, where you can then publish the knowledge models for the community, and also you can find others. But as I mentioned, so far there are just the mostly life sciences versions.
Thank you, Robert. And maybe Michael also can have some suggestion for this criteria guidelines regarding social sciences in terms of open data. You are muted, Michael. You are muted.
Sorry, I was busy answering questions on the text as well. They're coming everywhere. Yeah, so the social sciences guidelines, I actually feel personally, this is my personal opinion, that lots of the data guidelines are very much geared towards science, technology and medicine. I actually have a member of my team who's leading a humanities and social science and the arts data guidelines, because even the term data can sometimes not be something familiar to people who are working in something in the humanities field. So we try to be agnostic on the text, but also be very clear what is meant by data in humanities and social sciences. So these can be surveys potentially, or archaeological findings, etc. But we really do need to help describe where the repositories are that take this kind of data, and also really support the social science and humanities researchers to understand what is meant by data. I do think there's a bit of confusion, and what we're trying to do on Open Research Europe is create our own set of social science and humanities data guidelines to much better suit them, because realistically, when you look at data policies across journals, they're very much for those that have hard quantitative data. But I really do think that there needs to be a bit more explanation and a bit more thought for the social science and humanities. And it's something we're working on.
Thank you, Michael. And I would like to close with the final question and then last message from all of you. So last question will be, because we are running out of the time, what policies are foreseen so far on the European level to overcome structural hurdles nationally or locally regarding the implementation of open science, both in doctoral education and academic evaluation? And maybe Lidia, you could have some.
Yes, thank you. Well, it is really a question that would start a new session again, because there's full of nuances. It's a big question to end the session. Let me then be super concise. I think that we need to change the way research is assessed. I think that will be an opener for re-changing everything else in the system that is blocking.
Yeah, thank you, Lidia. And I think this is also where Irika's researcher, like from my message, should be involved to change this research culture, that how can we, like everyone has to contribute and not wait only what the others officials or will come. And last message from all of you, Michael, for our audience.
Just that I think, I think I'm always more glass half full than half empty. I think open science going forward, I think there's now so many policies moving towards doing open science. I think open access will become the norm in publishing. First time I've really understood a little bit more about the data stewardship wizard, which is going to help no end, because I have lots of people who say, what is a data management plan? So I do think that, going forward and keeping in contact with groups like Eurodoc, who have got a great training program as well, we will start shifting towards open science. And yeah, I think it's very positive going forward. So they're my last final thoughts.
Thank you, Michael. Now I will ask Lidia. You can give us some last message to all the participants and Irika's researchers.
Regarding researchers, don't give up. Continue advocating for open science. It is good for all of you. It's good for all of us. And just try to do your best. I know you have incredible challenges. I was reflecting on my own experience, and I think that the world has become much more complicated than in my time. And I'm really sorry for that, but precisely, I think we need to persist, and we need to keep advocating for open science. Don't give up.
Thank you, Lidia. Oleksandr?
Thanks. And actually, let us just remember that open science is an amazing thing, and it gives amazing number of benefits to all researchers, and especially to early career ones. But let us also remember that open science requires extra work and extra training. And this should be clearly reflected into policies regarding early career researchers. So I encourage all the policymakers to acknowledge this.
Thank you, Oleksandr. And last message from Robert.
Enjoy doing your research. That's the most important thing.
Okay, so thank you again. Thank you very much, all the attendees and especially our speakers today. So thank you again, and hope to see you soon.